check this thing out. Test, test. Welcome, welcome. Welcome to the live chat. This is Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Let me know if you can hear me in the comments. Looks like we have a couple of people listening. Am I coming through? Am I coming through? Is this thing on? Check, check. All right, we've got a signal. Thank you, Jack, for letting me know. All right. Hey, guys. You hear me? Excellent. Welcome to the live chat. If you have questions, throw them in there. Who's my favorite MMA fighter? Probably my favorite MMA fighter of all time was Genki Sudo. Super interesting guy. Had a lot of fights in Japan. Did MMA. He did kickboxing. He even did pro wrestling over in Japan. And then with his debut fight in the UFC, a lot of people were excited about that. He won, and he came out with his flag that said, "We are all one," with all the flags of the world on it, not unlike this t-shirt that I'm wearing right now, and announced his retirement. And then went on to become a monk, and then a pop star. Very interesting guy, this Genki Sudo. If you don't know who that is, look up his highlight reel. Fascinating guy, very inspiring fighter. Do I think Conor is washed up? No, man. That's a funny term that gets thrown around a lot in fighting when a fighter loses. It's funny how that works. In any other sport, if your team loses, it's like, okay, we'll get him next time. But in combat sports, it's like, oh man, he lost one fight. He's done, man. Get him out of there. He's a bum now. No, Conor McGregor's a very capable fighter. I mean, he's a fairly young guy. He's got plenty of fights left in him. Is he going to be on top of the game again? Maybe. Maybe not. Who knows? But to think, he's done after that one loss. Nah. I think he's got a few more good fights in him. Is it hard to be a Mormon in China? It's hard to be a Mormon anywhere, man. It's hard to be a Mormon anywhere. A real one, anyway. Okay, what are the questions? How do we recognize when you are overtraining? Listen to your body. How are you feeling? Man, if your body starts telling you, dude, there's a problem, that means there's a problem. Do my kids speak Mandarin? Yes, they do. They speak English and Mandarin. Oh, hey, it's my buddy Nils. If you don't know Nils, he's a good friend of Captain Krav Maga, who you may recognize from some videos. He says, when will you finally admit that MMA is useless and switch to Krav Maga and learn how to defend yourself on the streets? That sounds like something Captain Krav Maga would say. I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe one of these days, maybe if Captain Krav Maga could come back over to Shanghai and teach me another lesson, I bet the folks at home would love to see that. How old am I now? I'm 20. No, so I'm not 20. I'm 42 years old. I was about to say 24. I'm 42. Where is the video where I will show the Shaolin spear thing? I am currently in the process of making that video. I'm glad you're excited to see it, because I'm excited to show it to you when it's done. Joe Rogan is saying that China being open is just propaganda. What are your thoughts about this living in Shanghai? I haven't heard what Joe Rogan said about China being open. The borders are somewhat closed right now because of the pandemic. China put itself on lockdown on this unprecedented level because of the pandemic for a very long time. For almost a year, there were, I think there was only one reported case of COVID in Shanghai. However, last week there were 8 new ones, 7 of which came from Chinese nationals returning from other countries. So Shanghai's been really lucky out of all the cities in China. My thoughts on Jake Paul versus Conor McGregor. Oh man, the Paul brothers, man, they've been at it. I don't know which one is which, Jake or the other one. Did he challenge Conor McGregor? I heard that one of those Paul brothers was fighting Ben Askren in a boxing match, which is interesting. You know, Ben Askren is not a boxer, but he is a professional fighter. He is a very accomplished professional athlete in multiple disciplines, wrestling, mixed martial arts. The dude knows how to train, and the Paul brothers, which one is it? Jake Paul? Logan Paul? I don't know. I honestly don't know the difference. Can't tell the difference. I haven't watched any of their content. I don't really know. But this Paul brother, I'm going to call him Jake because the 46th president of the United States of America, that's his name in the comment section, has said that is his name. Yeah, that's an interesting one, and a lot of people are hating on the idea of that fight right now. And I understand that. I understand that. We see a guy who is not a fighter. He's an entertainer, if you will, but then he has jumped into the fray. He's jumped into the ring. He has had a fight or two. How many fights has he had? One, two? I don't know. No, not too many. And now he is going at it with an actual fighter. And because it's boxing rather than MMA or wrestling, there's a lot of talk about, hey, he might actually win because he's boxed and this other guy's not a boxer. What do I think of it? It's a great money-making opportunity for those two, for both of them. So I get it. I get it why they're doing it. Who's going to win? I honestly don't care. But I imagine if Jake Paul wins, there will be a lot of talk on the internet about, boo, MMA sucks because this nobody who isn't even a real fighter beat up the fighter. Chico Rose asks, 200-pound guy with no fight experience versus a 100-pound, 150 pounds amateur kickboxer. Dude, there are so many variables in that equation. Why is that guy 200 pounds? Is he 200 pounds because, he is 6'1" and athletic, like myself? Is he 200 pounds because he's short and fat and sedentary and a prime candidate for heart disease? How good of an amateur kickboxer is this? Is this a dude who got off the couch himself for the first time and jumped in the ring and decided to give it a try without training? Man, always consider the variables when you ask questions, guys. All right, so many questions flying through here so fast. Can you become an elite level fighter if you start training at 20 years old? Yes, you absolutely can. You heard that you have to start very young to have some potential. The sport of mixed martial arts is not even old enough to have a decent representative sample to make that kind of assessment. It's not. But 20, man, I don't know what these young kids are being told these days. If you don't start when you're a baby, you're going to suck. Nah, man. If you're 20 years old and you want to train hard. Give it a go. Yeah. And if people tell you you're too old and they don't understand age, they don't understand athleticism. Maybe they just want a kid that they can brainwash. Oh, we got a super chat. Let's see what this says. Ramsey, is there any man alive that would have a chance against Mike Tyson in a street fight? Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Lots of them, I'm absolutely certain of it. Mike Tyson was a phenomenal boxer, phenomenal athlete, great fighter, super tough guy. He would give most humans a very difficult time at any age, even now. But is he unbeatable? No. Absolutely not. Anybody can win or lose a fight on any given day. And the more you fight, the more you understand that. The more you train, the more you understand that. When you understand your own mortality, you understand anybody can win or lose. But are there men alive that could beat Tyson in a street fight? Sure. Absolutely. Superman versus Goku. You know, I don't actually know who Goku is, other than he's one of those Japanese cartoon characters. And yeah, I've never actually seen an episode of Dragon Ball Z. I know he's a Dragon Ball Z character, at least I think he is. I saw about 5 minutes of a Dragon Ball Z episode. It was playing on television when I was in Argentina, and the whole thing happened in Spanish. And so, um, what I remember of it, there were two characters, and they're screaming at each other in Spanish. Um, it's just still frames of their faces and veins bulging out as they're sweating and screaming about how they're going to gather their power to destroy the other one, some nonsense like that. I wasn't really paying attention. And it went on for some time, like 10 minutes of just screaming and when I finish gathering my power, I'll show you. I don't know, man. So if you enjoy Japanese cartoons, more power to you. Yeah, it never really played on television where anywhere that I lived where I had access to a television. The best way to heal shin bruises. This is a really interesting question. Because you might think just wait, but there's more to it depending on what type of damage you have on your shin. Now, the shin, obviously there's the bone there, and there's the skin over the bone. What a lot of people don't know is there is a thin sheath of soft tissue between the skin and the bone, and that is the part that can bruise. When you fight and you get your round kicks checked, you'll often get these knots on your shin that feel like bumps on the bone. They feel as hard as the bone, and it's actually swollen soft tissue. So when you get these bruised up shins and these bumps on the soft tissue that are really hard like bone, it is imperative that you treat that as soon as you can. Some of the best things you can do are alternate between hot and cold, compresses, um, compression, like a compression sleeve or compression leggings, compression pants, something like that to keep some pressure on it. And elevation, rest is always good, but also to keep the blood flowing. So go on walks, go on a light run, something like that, and do some movement to get the blood coursing through your body on the regular. One of the worst things you can do when you have bruised up shins is to stop moving. And that can be the difference between healing in a matter of a week or so and drawing that out for like 3 months and not being able to kick a bag or train. So that's a really important question. And that's a mistake I have made in the past after fights, after having a bunch of kicks checked and walking around with knots on my shins and not being able to kick for like 3 months. Man, if you treat that, and it's not even difficult stuff to do, if you treat it right away, then yeah, it's much, much easier to deal with. Do I receive emails from America? I receive emails from all over the world. So if you want to email me with a question, email me at ramseydewey@gmail.com. I've got to tell you though, I respond to a lot more questions from the comment section of my YouTube videos. That is the number one thing I look at when I'm doing Q&A with the coach. A lot of people send me these extremely long novels of emails, and I appreciate the emails, I appreciate the letters, but man, there's only so much time in the world to read through everything. All right. Oh, we got a super chat. Is Jai real in your opinion? Josh in Jesus says, are you asking about Michael Jai White? I'm going to assume you're asking about Michael Jai White. Is he real in your opinion? Like, is he a real martial artist? Sure, absolutely. He practices martial arts. He's practiced for a very long time. He's a student of the game. Yes, he is asking about Michael Jai White. Are you asking... Ooh. Are you asking, like, could he beat such and such a UFC fighter or something like that? I don't know. He is a middle-aged man, very physically fit middle-aged man. He has not been in these fights, these knockout, drag-out brawls, so he probably still has a good chin on him. So I would not look past him in a fight. Absolutely would not. Don't look past anybody in the fight. You see somebody who looks like an absolute wimp, don't look past him. Super chat from O.C. Jones, who says, have you seen the documentary Hellstrom? I have not. What's that one about? Let me know in the comments what that is about. Thanks for the documentary recommendation. Appreciate that. Maybe I'll look that one up. Do I invest in stocks? No, I do not. Never played the stock market. Never been interested in that. Do you think you could out-wrestle college wrestlers? Not necessarily the best of the best. I've trained with a bunch of collegiate wrestlers, and yeah, man, some good guys. And as far as wrestling goes, they almost always out-wrestle me. As far as submission grappling goes, I almost always out-grapple them. So it's a different game, man. And as far as mixed martial arts goes, when we put on the gloves, yeah, that's a very different story. But what I love to do when I find somebody who is really good at a single emphasis like wrestling or jiu-jitsu in the gi or kickboxing, but not a mixed martial artist, I love to train with them at their specific discipline, at what they are very good at what they have an advantage at over me. That's very educational. A Broom sends in a super chat, thank you very much. Says, what is your opinion of karate combat? Would you consider them fighters or players such as BJJ competitors? Okay, I've seen a little bit of karate combat. I've seen their trailers, and it looks like a fun show. I've never actually watched any of the full fights. I mean, they are fighting. They're trying to knock each other out as far as I can tell, so I would consider that a fight. You know, even though there are very strict rules, again, they are trying to physically damage each other. So yeah, I'd call it a fight. Would I call it a good fight, or a bad fight, or a mediocre fight? I would actually have to watch some of them to tell you. Have I read the book Sun and Steel? No, I have not. Have I seen the Ramsey Dewey memes? What? There are Ramsey Dewey memes. I had no idea. We've got a super chat from Captain Cisco. Whoa, the captain of Deep Space Nine has sent in a super chat. Why do I train in China? I train in China because I live in China. So you're probably asking, why do I live in China? I live in China because 12 years ago, my wife and I decided, hey, let's move to China. That sounds really interesting. That sounds like something we would like to do. So we moved over here to the People's Republic of China, and yeah, it's probably a disappointing sounding story, I know. I know, there's no fancy like we were called upon by the Holy Spirit of God to move over here. No, nothing like that. We just decided this seems like something that is up our alley. Let's go give it a try. And we came over here. We liked being in China, and so we stayed. So there's no big fancy story about why I'm in China. Just got on an airplane and flew over here back when you could still do that. Now it's a little more complicated with a worldwide pandemic going around. O.C. Jones says Hellstrom is about post-World War II war crimes. Oh, interesting. And thank you for the super chat. And thanks for the info. Post-World War II war crimes. Man, I'm going to have to look that up. That is something that interests me. I don't know how many of you have seen my video about the time that I met Adolf Hitler in Argentina back in the 90s. And you're probably thinking, well, didn't Adolf Hitler die in Germany during World War II? Well, he probably did. But, yeah, there were a lot of the Nazi leaders, and maybe Adolf Hitler himself faked his death and flew over to South America, Argentina, Brazil, that area, and hid out over there. But I did meet This very old man, super old, looked to be like 100 years old, and he was this German man from Germany who fled Germany after World War II, and yeah, this guy was a Nazi, a former Nazi, and he may or may not have been Hitler. Anyway, I tell the story about that in one of my YouTube videos. Can I speak the language? I speak several languages. I speak English, I speak Spanish, I speak a little Chinese. My Chinese sucks, though. Captain Cisco asks. Another super chat from Josh and Jesus, who says, my daughter is... What is that? My daughter is tougher than most of your trolls. Yeah, she is. Go check out my daughter Eve in one of my recent videos where we review some bad self-defense techniques. Could I do a video about dancing? I've made several. I have some very old videos about some dance choreography I did way back in college, like 20 years ago. And I have a few videos where I discuss dance and martial arts and crossover, mostly as far as breathing goes. So if that's something that interests you, I do have some videos about that. Explosive push-ups or regular push-ups? Yes. Do both. Do all kinds of push-ups. Do push-ups on your hands, do push-ups on your knuckles, do elevated push-ups. Yeah, man. Do them all. Do jump off the floor push-ups, do clap behind your back and in front push-ups. Do them all, man. They're all good for you. Hey, do I like oatmeal? I don't know if I like it, but I eat a lot of it. I eat oatmeal almost every day. I eat oats just about every single morning. And so far, it seems to be working out for me. What else do we have? Man, these questions are flying by faster than I can read them. Sprints versus squats for explosive leg power. Yes, do both. Do both. You absolutely should do both. It's not an either-or situation there. Alright, we've got a super chat from our friend Alyssa, who says, with sparring, I have a hard time getting close enough to do some actual damage, or even if I get close enough, I still have a hard time to break through my opponent's defense. Any tips? Okay. Now, this often happens when we have a size disparity or a reach disparity, but more often than not, I notice it happens when fighters don't understand their own reach yet. And this is really common. Really common. A lot of the times I'll be sparring with some newer athletes at the gym, and they'll start complaining, oh man, I can't touch you because you got a longer reach. And I'll say, hold out your arms. And they hold out their arms and they're shocked to learn they actually have a longer reach. And I'm telling them the reach isn't the problem, it's how you understand it. So there are a bunch of exercises you can do to understand your reach better. One of which, shadow box very slowly and extend your shoulders as much as you can. And when you do that, you'll notice they come up and they protect your chin, which is how you should be punching anyway. And at the same time, pull your opposite shoulders back. Okay? And what else? Another thing that may be happening, especially if you're newer, you might find that you are having a hard time getting close because without even thinking about it, you may be moving away, which is our natural instinct, to move away from the danger. Right? Someone comes at you, they're punching, they're kicking. Our body tells us move away from that danger. And so you're going to have to reprogram yourself to move forward at angles, at 45s or 90-degree angles as they come in. So fight like a bullfighter. When the bull comes in, you cut that angle and flank them. So if any of you have questions where you feel like you need a really technical answer, feel free to send me some sparring footage so I can see exactly what's going on. I'll be happy to take a look at it. All right. And again, you can email me at ramseydewey@gmail.com. All right, we got another super chat from Scott McGregor who says, any current fighter you'd find very entertaining to watch? Any sport? Also, if you want historically accurate, wonderful handling, Jiandao look at LK Chen. Yeah, man. When I made that last video about Chinese swords, many people suggested LK Chen. I have yet to look at his channel, but thanks for the recommendation. Any current fighter that I find very entertaining to watch? That's a good question, man. That's a good question. I find them all entertaining. Man, it's hard to see a professional fight that I don't find entertaining. It's hard to see an amateur fight that I don't find entertaining. I'm pretty easily entertained, to be honest. Off the top of my head, like what's a recent fighter that a recent fight that I really enjoyed? Dang, I should probably start watching more UFC events. So many fight events go on, it's hard to keep track of them all. King Kong versus Godzilla, Captain Cisco asks. Oh, you guys are going after the pressing questions. There was when did that movie come out? Like 1968, the first King Kong versus Godzilla movie? And I saw this play on television when I was a kid, and man, I love Godzilla. Loved him a whole lot more when I was a little kid. And I remember watching this movie, rooting for Godzilla. It's a fictional movie, you can't change the outcome by rooting, but I was a kid, so I'm rooting for Godzilla to win. And spoiler alert for a 40-year-old movie, but Godzilla does not win. In the original King Kong vs. Godzilla, King Kong beats the crap out of him. And I remember feeling just very, very sad about that. Oh man, Doughboy Slim sent a super chat with no question at all. Thank you very much for your generous donation. But I learned an important lesson from that. A very important lesson from that. Which is, what you want and what actually happens in life are two radically different things. And so what you need to do, as opposed to trying to shape the universe around you, which we have very little control, if any, over at all, what you got to do is shape how you feel about it. And the sooner you learn that lesson, the better. Ryan Ambrose says Godzilla would win. I stand by that statement. I think Godzilla should win. I mean, the dude can shoot out radioactive flames from his mouth. And what's King Kong? He's a big ape. Apes are strong. Don't underestimate an ape. Don't fight an ape. But man, giant dragon lizard radioactive monster like Godzilla, I don't see why that should happen. What do I think about Shuai Zhao? Another one of those questions. I get this question every time I do a live Q&A, and I'm tempted to ignore it, but it's just Chinese for wrestling. Shuai Zhao just means wrestling. And generally when foreigners ask me that question, what I think about Shuai Zhao, they're talking about northern Beijing jacketed style wrestling. And it's really hard to find. It took me like 10 years of searching throughout China before I found an actual gym outside of a Chinese sports university where that is trained. And it's actually not that far away from where I live. As a former national champion, he's an old man, he's like 80 years old, and he coaches wrestling, Chinese traditional wrestling, over this gym down the road. And was there this whole time, man. I've been searching for over a decade before I found a dude who taught that. It's a fun sport. It's all about throwing. You just throw the guy on the ground. There's no ground fighting. So, classic style of old-timey folk wrestling. Alright, I'm seeing a repeat question here. Let's get off the topic of Godzilla and maybe move back to MMA or something else. Mystical Majin64 says, I like the aggressive style from Tyson, but also Israel Adesanya. Any tips on how I can combine the two? I got great power. I'm 6'6", 85 kg. Man, you are a long, lanky dude. Okay. Yeah. Israel Adesanya, also a long, lanky dude. A couple of tips. If there's a fighter you want to emulate, do some film studies on them. Watch them. Watch for tendencies in their movement that you feel like you can emulate, and try to emulate those movements and those footwork patterns and other patterns in your shadow boxing, which you should be doing every day. Outside of class, outside of the gym, get 3 rounds of shadow boxing in a day. Do I use shaving foam on my head? No, not usually. I usually comb my hair with an electric razor. Wasn't made for shaving heads, it was made for shaving faces, but it works on my head much better than it does on my face. Ice Trank, however you say that, says, aren't wrestlers benefited by the unified rules because grounded knees to the head and blows to the back of the head are prohibited? Sorry for the spam. Well, it's the first time I saw that question. Well, if wrestlers end up out of position because they got out-wrestled by a better wrestler, then sure. But where knees on the ground really benefit you are if you are the aggressor in that situation. And the only way you're going to be in that situation is if you are a better wrestler. So one thing I love to do is get guys in a cradle so their back is exposed and start dropping knees in the hips and the glutes and in the shoulders, because from that position you, well, unless you're fighting in Singapore 1FC, you can strike the back, you can strike the head with knees. That's perfectly legal. A lot of the fights I did here in China allowed strikes to the head, I should say kicks and knees and stomps to the head of a grounded opponent. Not all MMA shows use unified rules. You should understand that, especially in Asia. Often it is very different over in this part of the world. But yeah, knees on the ground benefit the guy who is a better grappler. Alright, we got a super chat from IB Rippin' M who says, Ramsey, you may be tough, but you would never escape my finishing move. Oh, what is it? The fartin' head scissors. Because when I have your head locked and I'm farting like crazy, you will be begging me to let go. Well, thank you for the warning. I'll make sure not to get caught in that move. Okay. Whew. Another question about Jake Paul. We already talked about that. How did GSP dominate wrestlers without having a wrestling background? I'll tell you how, because he went out and he got himself a wrestling background. Do you remember that guy who asked earlier, is 20 years old too old to become an elite fighter? And I said, no. That's a horrible misunderstanding and a horrible myth. Because as long as you are an able-bodied, athletic person and you know how to move, you can train yourself to acquire new skills, which is exactly what GSP did. He buckled down and he trained hard and he learned how to wrestle. I learned how to wrestle as an adult. I learned how to wrestle late in life. And one of the best things I ever did. And a lot of people, they become very reluctant to learn wrestling because they tell themselves they can't, because they missed that opportunity when they were young, or they don't have the high school wrestling coach available to them, or they didn't wrestle in college so there's nowhere to do it. They don't have a wrestling gym in their town. Look, wrestling is not a complicated sport. You get some mats. It doesn't even have to be a good wrestling mat. Get some cheap puzzle mats if that's all you can afford. And get some friends and try to pin each other on your shoulders. Work for a takedown, work for a pin. That's all it is. Just doing that much, you will learn an incredible lot. Spend a little bit of time every day doing that, and your prowess as a fighter will go up. But again, here's the problem when people focus on what they can't do instead of what they can do. So how did GSP become an elite wrestler for mixed martial arts when he didn't wrestle his whole life? And that's another thing. He streamlined it because he didn't go through all the crap that doesn't work in MMA. He focused only on that which does. And I talk about this all the time. I've made like 100 videos on this subject about how you don't need to go out there and focus on the accessories. You need to focus on your mains. And if you're a mixed martial artist, your main is the sport of mixed martial arts. 80% of jiu-jitsu doesn't work in MMA. 80% of wrestling doesn't work in MMA. 80% of karate and Muay Thai and all these other sports doesn't work in MMA. So focus on what does work in MMA. That's how GSP became such a good wrestler for MMA, because that's what he focused on. A lot of the times we see these other guys who were incredible wrestlers, collegiate wrestlers, national champions, etc., and they were just sort of okay in MMA, or you never see them wrestle in MMA. And a big part of the problem is because that's not their skill set. Their skill set was collegiate wrestling as opposed to wrestling for the sport of mixed martial arts. Big and important difference right there. Oh man, what happened? JJ Cooper says, "Hi Ramsey, I'm a BJJ orange belt. I'm turning 16 in 1 month. But," let me scroll up there, I'm losing that spot. "But given the," come back, I'm trying to read your question, dude. It sounded interesting. Sorry, I'm having problems with the scroll button. "But given the circumstances, I can't train in the gym. Any tips for training and preparing at home? I want to be in top shape. Work on getting in shape." And this applies to everybody who is at home, who doesn't have access to a gym right now because of the pandemic or whatever it is, where you don't have access to training partners, where you can't make physical contact with other people. You simply can't train in grappling if that is your situation, and pretending that you can is a bit counterproductive. Right? You can make yourself a homemade grappling dummy by stuffing a sweatshirt or whatever and go through the motions, but it's not the same as grappling, right? So get in the best shape you can get in. Set yourself a training schedule, an athletic training schedule, and stick to it. Doesn't have to be a great deal, but work on your athletic attributes. Do something every day to get stronger. Do something every day to get more flexible. Do something every day to get more technical as an athlete. And then when you go back to the gym and everybody's complaining, "Oh man, I got fat during lockdown," ha 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 ha, you'll be kicking their butts and they'll be like, "Dude, you're so strong. I thought jiu-jitsu wasn't about strength, and you're too strong. You're using your strength now." You know, the most backhanded compliment in jiu-jitsu. Modab G says, "How do I rate myself as a pro fighter?" Well, I retired from professional fighting back in 2011. Although, should I even think about announcing this? Because I have not decided. A friend of mine who is setting up a fight show is trying to talk me into coming out of retirement for another professional fight this summer, so we will see how that goes. I'm thinking about that right now, so we will see how that goes. Is Gee Bjj a must for MMA? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Everything in the gi you can absolutely throw in the trash when it comes to mixed martial arts. Doesn't matter one bit. I don't care how much the gi salesman at your gym tries to tell you that the gi is important. but the gi is important for grappling in the gi and nothing else. As far as mixed martial arts goes, nope, you don't need it. Super chat from the Nimbus, who says, maybe do this more often. Appreciate your words and energy. I'm going back to work from lunchtime to design some stuff. Good luck to you, my friend. Thank you for stopping by. Man, I wish I could do this more often. The big problem is, and Madhav keeps spamming that same question that I just answered. Dude, I answered your question. Settle down. Pay attention, guys. Pay attention. But yeah, the Great Firewall of China makes the internet very, very slow sometimes and sometimes unusable. Could I do a video on how to block strikes? Man, that's something I've been thinking about lately. Because I see a lot of people on the internet talking about blocking strikes, whereas dealing with strikes as far as not getting hit often has very little to do with blocking. You ever seen one of those kung fu movies? Of course you have. Karate movies, etc. The Karate Kid is a perfect example. After Daniel LaRusso waxes on, waxes off, sands the floor, paints the fence, does all these movements, paints the house, and he starts complaining, Mr. Miyagi, I thought you were going to teach me karate, but you just make me do chores. And then Mr. Miyagi is like, show me, sand the floor. And then, oh wow, we got a super chat. We'll address that in just one moment. And, man, and Daniel, he gets down, and he's like, no, stand up to sand the floor here. And then Mr. Miyagi starts throwing punches like 3 feet away from Daniel LaRusso, and he starts blocking these punches that would not have even come close to his face at all, that he had no reason to block at all. And you see this in every single kung fu movie. And you even see this in traditional martial arts schools being taught to this day. Like these karate blocks that aren't even blocks. We're never intended to block punches at all, being taught to block punches that don't even get close to penetrate. So yeah, I absolutely do want to make a technique video about that subject. So let's address that super chat. Oh wow, very generous super chat from Hell Awaits. You guys and your screen names. Hell Awaits says, I was at a Krav Maga school that had a fight class. When I went, they claimed they were sparring light, but they punched hard enough to knock each other's heads backwards. Yeah, that's not light. You've covered this a bit before, but what's your perspective on how hard is safe to spar regularly? No power whatsoever. As soon as you put a percentage of power behind that, some guys are going to start going hard. If you say light power or even light contact, again, people hear contact and they get some crazy ideas. Some people can smash through stacks of bricks with a single punch. I mean, go check out our friend Red Chucks, man. Red Chucks did a couple of podcasts with him. This dude holds several world records for brick breaking. And one of the coolest breaks I've ever seen in my life, he does the 1-inch punch and breaks a stack of like 10 bricks with it. It's pretty awesome. Yeah, shout out to Red Chucks. Go check that dude out. Now imagine a guy who can punch through a stack of 10 concrete slabs with a 1-inch punch, going 50% with you, right? That's just enough power to break through 5 bricks as opposed to 10. You wouldn't want that on your chin either. How about 10% power? You know, just enough power to break through 1 brick. How about spar with enough power to break through 0 bricks, right? So how hard is it to spar safe regularly? If you are sparring with no power, you can do it every day, but it's a skill that you have to acquire. It takes some time. You have to invest time into learning this skill. If you lack that skill, if you don't know how to do light sparring, go to a heavy bag and throw punches and kicks at that bag and try to touch it. Just touch it. Don't try to rock it. Don't try to move it. Don't try to swing it. Don't try to pop it. Don't try to make it jump. Just touch it. And if you're wearing gloves or shin guards, just try to compress the foam on those gloves without connecting with the bones on your hands. But yeah, man, if you're getting your head snapped back, that's not light contact. Man, as a judge of professional fights, when I see people's heads getting snapped back, that's what I write down as a significant strike in a full contact fight. So yeah, man. Some people's distinction between a fight and light sparring is, well, we didn't die, so it's light sparring. But yeah, if you're sparring correctly, if you're sparring light, if you're sparring without power, without the intent to damage, you can do that safely every single day, even multiple times a day. But again, it's a skill you have to earn through hard work. All right, we got another super chat from Embryo Imp. Hey Ramsey, who do you think wins between Whitaker and Costa? Now that the fight has been announced, will Costa learn from his last fight? My gut, as soon as I read that question, was Whitaker. Based solely on what I have seen, maybe I'll have to go back and rewatch some of Costa's fights and look for some patterns. But again, my gut's telling me I'm going to take Whitaker in that fight. What do you guys think? Okay, what else do we have? What do I think about Miyamoto Musashi? Good reading. Check it out. Doughboy Slim sends in another super chat. Man, appreciate all the super chats today. It's very generous of you guys. He says, what is the best strategy? Boxing. For someone like me, I've been boxing since 15. I'm 20 now. Right-handed, great fundamentals, great reflexes, great footwork, slower combos, not the best at close range. Okay, so you understand your strengths and you understand your weaknesses. It's good. It's good. I would focus on improving your weaknesses at this point, right? So you recognize you're not the best at close range, and that could mean a couple of things. Are you trying to get in close, and the guy's popping you, punishing you for it, or the guy's trying to get into that inside the pocket range with you and punishing you, and you can't seem to find your way around that? Either way, get really comfortable in that infighting range, and there are lots of ways to do that. And there's a silly drill. If you get a tire boxing, get a sparring partner. Go very light with this one because you're close enough to take a lot of damage, so no power on this one. Each of you puts a foot inside the tire. I got an old video on this channel where some of my students are doing this. And you keep that foot in the tire and it forces you to fight in this toe-to-toe range. And it takes out a lot of your tools, right? So you, as far as mobility goes, you're very restricted. But again, it does get you comfortable in that very specific range. Now you can do some other things. You can tie each other up on a rope. Man, I saw this video of these dudes who had this really tiny boxing ring. It was like a 2x2 meter boxing ring. Man, I really want to get one of these. I would love to have one of these in my gym. Just a tiny little ring off the side of the ring. And I'll tell you why. Because there's only enough room inside this ring for infighting. For either toe-to-toe or in the pocket. Nowhere to run. You still have full mobility, which you don't have in the tire boxing drill. But if you have a chance, if you have some way to rope off a tiny little area, no bigger than 2x2 meters, do some light sparring inside of that and get really, really comfortable with that infighting range and turn your weaknesses into your strengths. Again, it is super important to recognize our weaknesses. And the way we do that, we become humbled, right? You get out there and you box and you get out there and you spar and you get punished because you have those weaknesses, right? And you start to recognize them. And of course, your opponents recognize them too, which is why they're punishing you for it. But once you recognize them, you can start to work on them. You can start to fix them. And then you patch up all the holes in that boat so your opponent can't try to sink it anymore. Right? Good luck to you, my friend. I hope that helps. All right, so many questions here. How was my experience transitioning from Taekwondo to MMA? All right, my first professional sport was kickboxing. kickboxing. My second professional sport was Muay Thai. My third professional sport was MMA. So I went from Taekwondo to kickboxing, which is a substantial leap. I didn't think it would be because you punch and you kick in Taekwondo, you punch and you kick in kickboxing. But the targets are different. In kickboxing, you can punch the head, you can kick the legs. You can't do that in Taekwondo. And anytime you change the rules ever so slightly, you change the whole game in a really big way. So I had a similar experience with Muay Thai. The clinch was this whole separate field, but I found I really loved the clinch because I hated getting punched in the face coming from Taekwondo, and the clinch I found was a really cool way to stop getting punched in the face. And yeah, man. And so the transition from Muay Thai to MMA was a more natural one, although when I started out, I got taken down a lot because I didn't know how to grapple. And so out of necessity, I started getting really good at the guard. So most of my submission wins in mixed martial arts came from the guard. We have a super chat from Killer Breed 01 who says, "Did you ever try to perform the infamous Dempsey roll in any of your matches?" You know, when I was fighting pro, I didn't even know what the Dempsey roll was. I learned that ex post facto. Man, I first picked up Jack Dempsey's book after I retired from professional fighting, and I was just kicking myself. Dang, I should have read this before. Every prospective fighter needs to read Jack Dempsey's book before. Every prospective fighter needs to study that man. But the Dempsey roll, I mean, what is it? It's been sensationalized by that Japanese cartoon you guys keep telling me to watch. And what's that one called? Hajime no Ippo, something like that, however you pronounce that. That boxing manga anime cartoon. Somebody sent me a link to that and said, "Hey Ramsey, do one of your fantastic fictional fight scenes about this one." He's using the Dempsey roll, and it's super realistic. And then this guy starts doing this thing, and he's having this inner monologue, and it lasts like 5 minutes, and then he's like, "Dempsey roll," and he actually shouts out the move and starts like, anyway, all the Dempsey roll is bobbing and weaving as you throw hooks, as you move your feet from left to right, cutting the angles from the left side to the right side. That's all it is. It's not a big fancy crazy movement. Man, I really should make a technique video about that. So again, I think it's romanticized a great deal, but it's just a really, really simple movement. All right. I feel like I'm always missing a bunch of great questions as I answer one. I miss like 10 others. It's like the infamous Hydra: chop off one head and 3 more grow in its place. Why do a lot of great fighters come from Brigham Young University? That guy says. I don't know if a lot of great fighters come from BYU, but I can think of a few. For example, Chael Sonnen. He started at Brigham Young University. He actually started the same year that I started at Brigham Young University. He doesn't know me, but I do remember seeing him in passing at the Smithfield House because was he was in the wrestling program there, and my Taekwondo class, the first Taekwondo class that I took in my life, was at Brigham Young University in the wrestling room, and so that is actually how I became acquainted with the fact that mixed martial arts was a thing. This was way back in the early days of the UFC. Mark Schultz was the wrestling coach at BYU, and man, a lot of those guys who trained under Mark Schultz ended up becoming great fighters. So why were they great? The wrestling team back then was great, man. It was a great wrestling team before they cut the program. Why else? Why else do good athletes come out of there? Well, I'll tell you a couple of reasons I can think of off the top of my head. Students at BYU, they don't drink, they don't smoke, they don't do drugs, and that makes a difference. That does make a difference. It's the most stone cold sober school in the country. I'm not kidding about that. And that does make a difference. We got a super chat from MJ who says, "Did you ever smack talk or have anyone try it on you during your fighting career?" Sort of. Well, I didn't, but here's what happened. Before I ever tried mixed martial arts, and this is the reason why I took an MMA fight for the first time, because I had no interest in mixed martial arts. I wanted to be a kickboxer, and just a kickboxer. I was okay with Muay Thai fights, that's as much grappling as I wanted to do. So I did kickboxing, and I did Muay Thai, MMA, meh, no. But there was this online forum, which was called the Smack Talk Forum, I kid you not, where local MMA fighters, local kickboxers would get together and they would just chat. It was just a chat group. And there was this fellow who had a few MMA fights under his belt, and he challenged me to an MMA fight. And there was a little bit of smack talk, and he said, "You're just a kickboxer. I would kick your butt if we fought in the cage." Because I had actually fought against him in a kickboxing match, and I beat him, second round TKO, had him thrown up in the middle of the ring. And he wanted a rematch, but he wanted a rematch in the cage, in MMA. And I said, well, I'm a pragmatic guy. I kicked your butt once, I'll kick it again. And so that is the reason why I did my first MMA fight. So I got in there, and I thought I'll just kick him again. I'll kick him in the guts again. I'll make him throw up again. And he shoots in for a takedown, lifts me up off the ground, slams me into the floor. I actually break my feet on the way down. And I scramble up. I'm full of adrenaline. I don't feel the pain. And I clinch up with him. I'm standing up. I start throwing shovel hooks. His posture breaks. I grab him in a front headlock. Looks a little bit like a guillotine. It's just a front headlock. Keep throwing those left shovel hooks into the liver. He collapses to his knees because I'm hitting him in the liver. And yeah, he taps out to liver shots. It's recorded on SureDog as a guillotine choke. And it was a weird situation. But yeah, that was my first MMA fight. That's how I got into it. Why I stayed in it is because kickboxing was a dying sport in America. It got really, really hard to find kickboxing matches. And if you wanted to do combat sports, you had to do MMA basically. So that's what I stuck with. How is the COVID situation in China? We talked about this earlier. There are currently 8 confirmed cases of COVID in Shanghai from Chinese nationals returning from other countries. We spoke of that before, so yeah, it's not too bad actually. It's not too bad. Have I ever trained somebody with a disability such as blindness or bound to a wheelchair? What are your thoughts about that? Yeah, I've trained a few people with disabilities. I got one myself. I got blindness in one eye, man. And yeah, I had a student who was deaf, this young woman who was deaf, and so I don't know sign language, so I had to communicate with her on any details through writing. She'd pull out her phone and I'd write the message, she'd write a message. But mostly, you know, it was like see and do type of thing. But I do remember I was teaching her an armbar, and she did that armbar perfectly, and she's doing the armbar on me, and I start saying tap, verbally tapping instead of physically tapping, and she keeps going, and my arm starts getting hyperextended, and I realize, oh, whoops, she's deaf. I need to physically tap. At which point, yeah, silly me, right? Yeah, man, I've never trained anyone in a wheelchair. I did train a guy for a short time who had a stroke and lost a significant percentage of the mobility in one side of his body. And yeah, his goal was just to keep moving for health and fitness. And yeah. You want to be a prison guard? Hold on, let me take a look at this. I have a friend who is a prison guard. Our friend Alexander says, I want to be a prison guard, but in my state there's only 40 hours of hand-to-hand combat training. Would you recommend taking a martial art for a while first, or just go for it? And which and how long? Oh man, my friend Bob, he's a prison guard. He's worked as a prison guard for a very long time. He had a background in Kenpo karate, and yeah, he's told me so many prison guard stories, all these crazy, crazy prison guard stories. And apparently nothing prepares you for the prison like the prison itself, but the more you know, the better. And yeah, maybe what I would recommend, go talk to prison guards. Talk to guys who've worked in that industry for a while. Because, man, the information they will be able to tell you is much, much more eye-opening than anything I can tell you. I could tell you, yeah, go take some judo, go take some jiu-jitsu classes, learn some karate, learn how to box, learn some Krav Maga, whatever, I don't know. But talk to somebody who's actually been there. Talk to somebody in the industry, because their advice is going to be so much more valuable and to the point than anything I can tell you. I mean, man, the stories that my friend Bob tells me about prison are just hair-raising. So, yeah, man, it changes a man. Not just the guys on the inside, but the prison guards themselves. So, prepare yourself mentally as well as physically. Your dad can do 50 pull-ups, and he's got a wheelchair. That's awesome, man. That is fantastic. That's what I'm talking about. Focus on what you can do instead of what you can't do. And man, it is so sad. There are so many people in the world, able-bodied people with two working legs, and they sit on their butt all day. And then you got guys in wheelchairs who are forced to focus on what they can do instead of what they can't. And they get out there and do awesome stuff like 50 pull-ups, man. All right, what else do we have? Striking or grappling, which is a little bit more effective in MMA? It depends on which one your opponent knows less of. Everybody in professional MMA is proficient in striking and grappling and everything in between. And if there's a big disparity, you will see it. It will be exposed. If you have an expert striker who doesn't know how to wrestle and doesn't know jiu-jitsu, he will be exposed. If you have an expert grappler who doesn't know how to strike, he will be exposed. So whatever you don't know will bite you in the butt. Our friend Hayden says he has a mild form of epilepsy. He would like to start training either BJJ or Muay Thai. I played contact sports like football. What would I recommend? Okay, go give it a try. Go give it a try. And yeah, man, if the epilepsy becomes a problem, check your diet. Obviously, check with doctors and dietitians about this, but you may also want to look into the ketogenic diet. And this is probably the only time I would recommend a ketogenic diet, because it's not a diet I would recommend to most athletes. Do you know why that diet was invented in the first place? To treat epilepsy. To reduce the symptoms of epilepsy. That's what it's for. So do a little bit of research on that and see if that can potentially help you. What else do we have? Everybody's talking about vegans in the comments right now. Everybody's arguing about vegans. Vegan diets are awesome. Vegan diets suck. Vegans can't be athletes. Vegans can't be athletes. This always happens whenever people start talking about vegans. It's always one or the other. Veganism is the best. Veganism is the worst. Veganism is a thing. It's a thing. That's it. It's a thing. Works out for some people, doesn't work out for some others. Alright, do we have any non-vegan questions out there? Any questions containing milk products or meat or leather or other animal products? Okay. How worth it is it to train to overcome the power of smoosh? Going against way bigger dudes, does it help or hurt technique? Is it valuable? Yeah, that is absolutely something that every serious martial artist needs to learn, especially in jiu-jitsu, man, because in jiu-jitsu, you have to learn how to fight on the top and on the bottom, especially on the bottom without getting smushed. And if you don't know how to fight on the bottom without getting smushed, then your jiu-jitsu is not very good. And yeah, man, as soon as there is a fighter who is bigger than, let's say 30% bigger than you, 30% stronger than you, when the numbers start getting bigger than that, you need to streamline your technique a lot. Like a whole lot. So yeah, man, invest time into training with some big dudes. Train with everybody. Train with big dudes, train with little dudes, train with everybody in between. Everybody's still talking about vegans. Vegan questions. Taunting the vegans with bacon. Alright. Any other non-vegan questions? Okay. Question about kinesthetic bodily intelligence. How do you train yourself to have kinesthetic intelligence? Kinesthetic intelligence is your ability to move, basically, to move your body in intelligent ways. How do you train your body to have kinesthetic intelligence? By doing physical tasks, by participating in physical culture, by doing physical things that are difficult for you until they get easier. Do something every day to get more technical, I always say. Something every day to get stronger, something every day to get more flexible. Focus on those three things, you will increase your kinesthetic bodily intelligence. Also, spend 5 minutes a day. Here's a little tip for you. Little pro tip. Set apart 5 minutes every day to focus on a new task, a new physical task that is complex, that you don't know how to do, that you're not good at, and practice it 5 minutes a day for 3 months. And chances are in 3 months you will be good at it. And then what do? Pick a new physically difficult task, something like juggling. Or if you don't know how to use a speed bag, work in the speed bag. Or if your balance is terrible, maybe riding a skateboard or something like that. Pick some new difficult task that you don't know how to do, that requires you to use your body and develop your kinesthetic bodily intelligence. Take a dance class, something like that. How do you improve it? You use it. A non-vegan question, all right. Let's see here. Let's read this one. Where did it go? Sorry, guys, the scroll bar is not my friend today. When is the last time I went out of China? I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago. Don't remember. In the last 12 years, I've left China 3 times. Oh, we got a super chat. Alexander sends in a super chat. Thank you for answering my question. I love you. This is the prison guard. All right. Thank you for your super chat. Thank you for participating, my friend. And thanks for the question. That was a good question. But seriously, talk to prison guards. They have some of the coolest and craziest stories you will ever hear in your life. What age do I think kids can start training martial arts? Well, to very limited extents, they can start training as soon as they're able to sit on your lap and move. I mean, man, my daughters, when they were babies, I would sit them on my lap and I would play little games with them. And the games didn't really resemble martial arts. I would hold up my hands and have them pat my hands and see if they could recognize the difference between left and right. And what am I doing right there? Well, I'm playing with them. I'm helping them develop hand-eye coordination and recognizing verbal cues. How does that translate into fighting? Well, later on, now they can do pad drills. Now they can hit the pads. Okay, where do we go from there? But at the same time, taking your kids to a class, like a group martial arts class, where somebody else is teaching them. What are they going to get out of that? Man, that depends. Because a lot of people really suck at teaching kids. So go check out a number of different kids' classes. Sit in, watch them if they allow it. Some people don't allow you to watch kids' classes. But observe as much as possible, and that way you can make an informed decision. And if your kids don't seem to be learning anything, because some kids are just too young. Like I occasionally have some parents bring their kids into my gym and say, hey, teach my kid martial arts. And the kid just runs around the gym, just completely uncontrollable and unable to focus. And yeah, it's a mess. So it's not so much a matter of how old, so much as how mature. So I remember once there were these two ladies. They brought their young sons in to my class, and they wanted to learn. One was 6 years old, one was 5 years old, and the 5-year-old was much more mature than the 6-year-old. The 5-year-old was ready to learn. The 6-year-old just wanted to run around and scream and throw things. So yeah, man, it really depends on how good of a job you do as a parent, and also the personal development of your child, and that's going to vary greatly from child to child. The fire dragon strongly dislikes training kids. So do I. Other people's children. Here's the thing about kids. Your own kids are awesome. Teaching your own kids, great. Other people's children, they can keep them. That's what I think. Why China? Are you asking why I live in China? We already answered that question. Skip. Next. How do I introduce my students to more complex striking techniques like spinning kicks or combinations? Let's go back to that question. I see people breaking them down into steps and then speeding them up, interested in other methods. Well, if there is a technique that seems complex, like the other day I was teaching spinning hook kicks, and a lot of people suck at the spinning hook kick for a very long time because for most people it takes a long time to develop the balance and the flexibility and the coordination and the fine motor movement and the development of the hip flexors in order to be good at that kick. And so it's very important to start learning that kick very early if you want to be good at it. But a mistake a lot of people make is they will not train in a spinning hook kick until much later in their training because they think that's too fancy, that's too complicated. And then they never get around to learning it or developing any skill at it because they've never practiced it. So they get up to the black belt level and all their other techniques, and then they're just an absolute novice at a spinning hook kick. So I've taken many different approaches to teaching the spinning hook kick specifically. And I've had many different results at teaching that kick. And this last week I tried a different one. Because I had some new students, and I had a few more advanced students. And they were in the same class. And so the first thing I taught them was the spinning dragon tail sweep. You know, that Mortal Kombat sweep, which mechanically works nothing like a spinning hook kick. It looks like a spinning hook kick, though. The actual sweep is done by getting your thigh and your butt behind the legs and then sitting on it. It's not actually kicking the legs. So if you look at the Mortal Kombat game, where essentially you heel kick their foot and they fall over on their back, that's completely wrong. But the reason I taught them this move first is to get them used to extending the leg and spinning, because the motion itself is quite similar. The move looks very similar. Okay? And then I had them stand up and start doing wheel kicks. Wheel kicks are different than hook kicks. A hook kick, you are going to hook your leg. You're going to bend your knee. And a wheel kick, you will not. So wheel kicks, such as a wheel kick, thigh sweep, and a meia lua encompassum, a capoeira wheel kick, right, with no bend in the knee. And it looks fancy, but in many ways it's actually a lot easier than the hook kick because there's less joint articulation going on there. And then we transitioned over to hooking the leg and balancing and so on. And that seemed to work out pretty well. So I'm always looking for more efficient ways to do things. Again, I'd never taught the spinning hook kick like that before. And with this particular group, it worked out pretty well. By the end of the class, everybody seemed to be throwing a functional spinning hook kick. And the more experienced guys were throwing better spinning hook kicks. So maybe I'll keep working with that method for a while until I find a better one. If you lock yourself into a very specific pattern of teaching and tell yourself, this is the only way I will ever teach forever and ever, amen, because this is how my teacher taught me and how his teacher taught him. One teaching method doesn't reach everybody. It can't. One coaching method generally works for one guy. Right? Some people are going to get it right away, some people won't. Some people are going to understand you and resonate with you right away, some people won't. Don't take that personally. Take it as motivation to become a better teacher. Okay, our friend Raven with the number 4 says, he's getting into mandatory military service soon for 6 to 9 months. Tips to not lose my skills. Haven't been able to train properly since the first lockdown began. Okay. As I said to the other guy who is worried about developing his skills during lockdown, focus on physical fitness, and you're going into the military. In most of the militaries in the world, physical fitness is a big part of it. They make you do lots of exercises, run and do push-ups and all that stuff. So, get an early start. Get as physically fit as you can. And yeah, man, depending on what type of skills you have, if they're striking skills, shadow box every day, you can do that anywhere. You can do that anywhere. Focus on the stuff where you don't need special equipment or a special setup to do it. Things that you can do by yourself, like shadow boxing, like calisthenics, like jumping, like running, etc. Do that stuff, man. The most important thing you can do when you are stuck on lockdown is stick to a schedule. Do I know how to do the ritual thing before a Muay Thai fight? Well, there are a few different rituals. Generally speaking, what the Thais do, they will bow before they come into the ring. They will come into the ring. They will trace their hand across the ropes. They will bow at each post, at each turnbuckle, trace their hand along the ropes until they get back to their corner. They will bow 3 times, once for the king, once for the crowd, and once for their coach. They will go to their corner, they will pray, they will come back out, they will do a dance, the Muay or the Y crew, whatever you want to call that. And that dance is going to vary from training camp to training camp, from fighter to fighter. There are many different forms of that. And then they have this epic dance battle in the middle of the ring. They go back to their corners, they pray, and then the fight begins. It's pretty simple. Sammy sends in a super chat. How are you, Ramsey? I'm still training, even though it's going to be for a while until fights can be arranged again in Finland. That's awesome, man. Thanks for all the content. You were awesome. Sammy, you were an example to us all. Man, so many people give up hope when they can't see the end of the tunnel. And here you are, my friend, getting out there and training regardless. Man, motivation is belief. As I said before in a recent video, motivation is belief. Right? You are exercising faith here that there is an end to the tunnel. And because of that, you will see it. And you're going to get stuff done. Thank you for being an example to everybody. How do I structure my MMA classes? It's a good question. I think a better question right now would be, how would I like to structure my MMA classes versus how they're being structured right now? Now, I do a couple of different things with MMA classes. There are the public classes where you sign up at the gym and anybody can take them, and then there are classes that or I guess I should say just fighter training, and that's a different thing. With the MMA classes, it's a pretty standard thing. I do a lot of joint rotation. I do some warm-ups. I do a lot of tumbling, and then I do some specific exercises to emulate specific movements, sit-outs, shots, etc. I like to do warm-up with takedowns in the MMA classes. A simple drill, the water drill. I've shown that on this channel with my friend Michael Holbert. The water drill, look that one up. I do that one a lot in my MMA classes. And then I will generally teach a sequence. Again, this is the public classes, not the fighter training. I'll teach a sequence. Some people will call that a drill, but a sequence. For example, here's a technique that can lead into this technique, that can lead into this position. Then we'll generally do some positional sparring. And if there's time at the end, we'll do some actual sparring. So that's a typical group MMA class in the public classes. As far as fighter training, it depends on which fighters I'm training on that specific day, what they need to accomplish, and yeah, who their training partners are. What else do we have? Why doesn't the couch talk? Says Mr. Trousers. Is it because it can't or it just doesn't want to? You know, I get so many questions on this channel for my couch. I mean, a lot of people write in and they say, hey coach, I have this question, can you help me out? But I get probably an equal number of people saying, hey couch. And I'm like, oh, it's for you. And then my couch is just there like, anything. My couch is terrible at answering your questions, so please direct your questions to the coach and not the couch. And I'm much more likely to answer you than this sofa here. Hey, I got a question for you guys. So I grew up in the United States, but I'm a first-generation American. Some of you know that, some of you don't. My family is from England, and then they moved over to the U.S. And as I was growing up, I didn't call these couches, I would always say settee, because that's what my mother said, settee. So I'm curious, I know some of you folks are from England, and my aunt, my mother's youngest sister, she calls them a Chesterfield. She doesn't say settee, she doesn't say couch, she doesn't say sofa, she says Chesterfield. And so I'm wondering, what is the deal? They're in the same family, they grew up together, they can't even agree on what to call the couch. So what does the average British person call a couch, or a sofa, or a settee, or a Chesterfield? Yeah, anybody out there know? Please answer my question. Because in spite of being a citizen of the United Kingdom, I've never actually been there. Crazy, I know. A Davenport. Ooh, that sounds fancy. A Chesterfield is a specific type of sofa. Okay. In Scotland, it's a sofa. Hmm. How interesting. All right, my British friends, thank you. I feel educated now. I'm gonna have to ask my mom, like, was this just a thing that they said in your family specifically, or is that like a Northern English thing versus a Southern English thing, or just up in County Durham? I don't know. There's one thing I know about England is, especially like 50 years ago, is that from one town to another, man, the dialects could vary radically. And my mother comes from way up north where you need subtitles to understand what they're saying. One person says, it's settee. All right. I don't feel so weird anymore. But, man, when you grow up in small town America and people are talking about couches and you say, did you mean settee? That's enough to get you beaten up. True story. That actually happened to me. Big part of why I got into martial arts, because I got beaten up for talking different. Have I ever seen Dragon Ball Z? No, we talked about this about an hour ago on this live Q&A. If you didn't see it, I did a podcast recently with Joe and Brad over at the Fight Bible. Go check them out, the Fight Bible. It's a great YouTube channel. You may remember them from Fight Perfect TV. Well, they are back. Go check them out. And we did a podcast where we did talk about Dragon Ball Z, and up on my channel I did put a little, as I remember it, version of a 5-minute clip of Dragon Ball Z that I did see. So, from the perspective of somebody who does not watch Japanese cartoons, a reenactment of a Japanese cartoon. It's on there. Go check it out. The screen is gray. Yeah, I saw it flash gray for a second there. Technical difficulties from the Great Firewall of China, my friends. Have I seen Cowboy Bebop? No. Is that another Japanese cartoon? Ramsey, please talk in a British accent. Guys, I can only really speak in a British accent if I'm imitating my mother yelling at me. And I don't like to do that because it's terrifying. Is there shadow wrestling? Like shadow judo, shadow BJJ that you can show us? Yeah, there's a lot of confusion about shadow wrestling. Everybody knows about shadow boxing. Not everybody knows about shadow wrestling. But it's a really important thing that all grapplers, all MMA fighters need to do. But not everybody knows how to do it. It's really easy to visualize punching and kicking because it's easy to do that in the air. It's much more difficult to visualize grappling. And that's one of the reasons that traditional martial arts forms look really weird. That's one of those reasons that Tai Chi forms look so weird. They're sticking their hands out like this and they're doing stuff like that and they've got a hand up like this and you look at, like, when would you ever do that in a fight? That doesn't look like a punch or a kick because it's not. Those are grappling forms. So, yeah, I definitely want to make a video on shadow wrestling. I love that recommendation. I'm going to write that down. I'm going to write that down right now. Up my notes right here. Okay. Write note. Make YouTube video about how to do shadow wrestling. Boom. It's on the list. It's on the list. Can't say exactly when it's coming out, but it's on the list. I guess the great thing about that one is I can make that one by myself. I would make a lot more technique videos than I do, but sometimes I usually make the technique videos after my evening classes, and after the evening class everybody's tired and they're like, oh man, I gotta go catch the metro, I'm in a hurry, sorry, I can't stick around to help. But, yeah, I can definitely do that one by myself. Will the bench press help me with push-ups? I can only do 20 push-ups. I don't know, but it won't make your push-ups worse, so give it a try. Do both. Why not? Could Andre the Giant beat a silverback gorilla? Probably not. Andre the Giant was a big, strong man, and according to his trainer, he was a whole lot faster than what we ever saw in the WWF because they specifically told him to act like a slow, lumbering giant like the Frankenstein monster because it was part of his character. But apparently he was a very agile guy back in the day. The late, great Andre the Giant. Who else reckons they could beat Master Wong in a fight? Man, I bet a lot of people could beat Master Wong in a fight. As long as you train to fight and you know how to fight. If you don't actually know how to fight, though, I wouldn't pick a fight with them. Don't pick a fight with anybody, especially if you don't know how to fight. Can VR games help to increase your reaction speed? Well, games of any type will help you to increase your reaction speed for that specific game. Will that have crossover with fighting? I don't know. Gorillas are vegan? That's not actually true. Gorillas are primarily herbivorous. But even animals that are 100% herbivorous are not vegans. Veganism is a socio-political movement. Being herbivorous is a diet. But yeah, man. In 1996, a lot of people don't know this, but in 1996, the Jane Goodall Institute, the world's foremost institute on researching gorillas, found out that gorillas sometimes eat monkeys and rats and other small animals and insects. Their diet is primarily leaves and stems, but man, they do sometimes eat animals. Here's another interesting thing a lot of people don't know. Most herbivorous animals are actually opportunistic omnivores. And this boggles people's minds. Cows, horses, goats, deer, man, they will eat carrion. They will scavenge dead animals if they can find them. Why don't we see it all the time? Well, they're lousy hunters. Herbivores are generally lousy hunters, but when they can find a small edible animal, they will eat it. They absolutely will. Nature loves efficiency, and that is a very efficient way to get nutrients. Anyway, we have a super chat from A Broom, who says, "Hey coach, I'm a karate and taekwondo practitioner who spars under MMA rules with other students in my classes who have taken other arts such as wrestling, boxing, and Muay Thai. Is this good?" Sounds good to me, man. Is it good? Sure, but anytime you ask, is this good, you should also ask, is this good for what? What is it good for? My friends, it is not enough to be good. You have to be good for something. Let's analyze this question a little deeper. All right, you practice taekwondo, karate, you spar under MMA rules with other students in your class. So I'm guessing what you mean is this good for MMA? Sure, you spar with other people from other backgrounds in wrestling and boxing and Muay Thai. Is it good? Yeah, that's a great step in the right direction. Keep it up. Do I think Bruce Lee could defeat the Mountain, half Thor Bjornsson? No. If they actually fought, no. I think Thor would squish him. Half Thor Bjornsson would squish most humans, even highly trained humans of that size. There just comes a point of, yeah, man, a point where you're just not going to climb that mountain anymore when the size difference is that big. It's like a small child fighting their dad. People are still arguing about whether or not it's called a settee or something else. Okay, guys. We get it. Let's move on. Riano Keeves keeps asking me what do I think about Taekyon, or however you pronounce that. One of the predecessor martial arts of Taekwondo. It's a Korean martial art. I've seen a bunch of videos about it. I've seen some Taekyon competitions. Apparently they have those in some places. And it's interesting from a historical standpoint. I mean, there's not a whole lot that stood out to me. A couple of the ways they throw kicks are a little bit different than what you generally see in Olympic-style Taekwondo or international-style Taekwondo. But, yeah, man. After a while, when you start watching all these punching, kicking, traditional martial arts, they just all start blending together into one. And so when you start asking, what do you think of the difference between Taekwondo and Taekyon, WTF Taekwondo, ITF Taekwondo, Kuksowan, and all these other Korean martial arts? It's like they all kind of look the same after a while. And some people are probably virtually screaming into their keyboards right now, no, my martial art is importantly different than that other Korean martial art that is almost exactly the same as ours and heavily borrows from this one, but it's totally different. Are you offended? If so, good, because that should teach you a valuable lesson about feelings. If you're offended, that teaches you some point in your life that you need to improve upon. Ligament strengthening exercises. Weightlifting, man. Lift weights, pick up some barbells. Strengthening your ligaments takes a long time. It takes years. Years of consistent, hard work. Move heavy things. Over time. Alright, A Broom sends in a super chat. Would Bruce Lee be good at any time period of MMA? You know, it's easy to say if Bruce Lee were thrown in to the octagon today, he'd get his butt kicked by modern fighters. And then you would say, well, what about UFC 1? Put Bruce Lee in UFC 1. He probably, if he made it to the semifinals or the finals, he probably would have got choked out by Royce Gracie or armbarred by Royce Gracie, most likely. While he was aware of the fact that grappling existed and he studied it academically, yeah, he was not a third-degree Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt or anywhere near that level in grappling. So, yeah, man. I love Bruce Lee, love him to death, man. But let's appreciate him for who he was and for what he actually did. Is boxing a good beginner martial art? I'm doing it. Yeah, absolutely. Boxing is a fantastic martial art. Great way to get your feet wet, or if that's the only combat sport you ever do, it's one of the best. So, keep on keeping on with that. More chat about Bruce Lee. If Bruce Lee was alive today, man, what would Bruce Lee do with the internet today? You know what? I was chatting with a friend about this topic, and he said, you're not going to like this, But if Bruce Lee had lived to this day with access to the internet, he would be Master Wong. Not beat Master Wong, he would be Master Wong. He wouldn't have turned into a UFC champion, he would be an internet self-defense guru. And I thought about that, and at first I was like, no, I don't want Bruce Lee to be Master Wong. But I thought, that was kind of the direction he was going in some ways. I mean, he was poo-pooing competition, like, well, boxing, I'm not going to do that because that's not a realistic representation of the streets. What I do is for the streets, man. Bruce Lee was saying that before Master Wong was. If Bruce Lee had access to the internet, and he was telling people all about the streets and how what you do in the ring is not like the streets, man, what would he have done with this platform today? Would Bruce Lee have been the proto-Master Wong, if you will, or would he have been this tournament fighting champion? Let me know in the comments. It's 6:59 in England right now. Cool. Do I encourage drop-ins at the JX Fight Club? The JX Fight Club closed over 2 years ago. I've talked about this a number of times on my channel because people are always asking me about the JX Fight Club. I've been at a different gym for 2 years now. You might notice if you watch my technique videos, they are not at the JX Fight Club, have not been at the JX Fight Club for over 2 years. So yeah, man. But do I encourage drop-ins at my gym? Yeah, absolutely. Come on by. If you're in Shanghai, drop in. Anytime there's a scheduled class, first class is free. Come try it out. Chin Tu Singh says, Master, why are you avoiding my question? I'm nobody's master. Please don't call me that. There are a million questions scrolling past faster than I can read them, so I'm not avoiding your question. I just saw it for the first time here. But he wants to know, what are my thoughts on Kalaripayattu and Vidyut Jamwal? I'm probably pronouncing those incorrectly. Those sound like Indian martial arts. I'm guessing. I've heard the name of that first one that starts with a K, but I don't know what it is. I couldn't tell you what it looks like. I don't think I've even watched a video of it, but I have heard that name. I have had a number of folks from India, I think it is, ask me about that specific martial art. If you have any videos you would recommend me watch to learn more about that, I would appreciate it. So if you have some links, please leave them in the comments. Ruben Marshak says, any thoughts on the Thor boxing match in general? Do you mean the upcoming match with Eddie, or or Thor's first boxing match that he did with that guy whose name I can't think of off the top of my head? Thor had a boxing match fairly recently. Did that one end in a draw? Did Thor win the decision? I don't know. I just saw some very brief clips of it. But as far as the match between Eddie Hall and Thor that's coming up, based on what I've seen of both of these men, neither of them has fought a man their size or close to it. And this is going to be very telling. This is going to be really interesting to see how they come to terms with boxing with a man that large. Eddie Hall in particular, because he's always fought smaller guys, and he has more boxing experience, but he has more boxing experience being the aggressor against guys half his size. And he won't have that advantage when he goes up against Thor. Now, I think Eddie's going to come out really aggressive, and it may shock and surprise Thor, because he's, again, never fought a guy Eddie's size who's come at him that aggressive before. And so that may stun him, that may set him back, that may cost him the fight, or at least the first round. But at the same time, Eddie's going to be shocked and surprised, I believe, when he comes out aggressive with Thor and realizes he can't push him around the same way he pushes around smaller guys. And so I'm guessing the first round is going to be 30 seconds of fireworks and then a little bit of a development of mutual respect between the two guys, and they're going to tire out. And it's probably going to be a snooze fest for the remaining rounds. It's going to be a weird fight, though. It's going to be a weird fight simply because of the size. People are probably wondering, are they going to reinforce the turnbuckles and the ropes on that boxing ring to hold those giants inside? I'm curious to see that too. All right, what else do we have? What does technical mean? How to get more technical? That's a good question. Technical is a term that often gets thrown out there in some goofy ways. I remember some guy the other day was talking about technical mount. Technical mount. In a discussion about the full mount position, where you're riding the guy on top, punching him in the face, and he said, in this position, you should go to technical mount. I was like, that's not a term that I use. Not a term I'm actually familiar with. So I looked it up on the internet to see how people are using the technical mount, and apparently most people who actually use that term mean just putting one foot up, which is something both trained and untrained people will do when somebody tries to hip escape. Everybody will do that. There's nothing technical about it. And so calling that technical mount, that's just kind of silly to me. But what makes something technical? That's a great question. Have you guys ever looked up the word technical in a dictionary? Let's look that up together right now. See what that says. Technical. Definition. I like looking up definitions of words that I've used my whole life, but never actually looked up, because often these words don't actually mean what I thought they meant. Technical, adjective, relating to a particular subject, art or craft or techniques. Definition 2, involving or concerned with applied and industrial sciences. Used as a noun. Definition 1, in areas with guerrilla warfare. A small truck with a machine gun mounted on the back. In basketball, short for a technical foul. And we can find more definitions in different dictionaries, but yeah, definition 1 seems to be the most applicable, relating to a particular subject, art, or craft, or its techniques. Means getting better at martial arts, getting better at doing the techniques. How do you become more technical? You practice the techniques until you can do them. Abram sends in a super chat. Thor Bjornsson versus a UFC light heavyweight, or a heavyweight. Which one? That's going to depend on which one. If this is an MMA fight, it's a top UFC heavyweight. You know, that size difference isn't nothing. If we took someone like, say, Francis Ngannou, who's a big dude who throws bombs with both hands against Thor, I don't think Thor can punch like that. Definitely not. But the size difference still isn't nothing. It's not nothing, man. I would pick a heavyweight like Francis Ngannou in that fight, but I still don't like the size difference. Sammy sends another super chat. See you next time. Hey, thank you so much for participating. Now get out there and train, my friend. Humunga says, hi Ramsey, could I ask you about faith? I'm kind of lost on how I should approach religion. Okay. There are so many ways to answer this question. We could get all dogmatic. We could get all serious. What is faith? Faith is an action word. Faith isn't just a set of doctrines and dogmas and beliefs. It's what you do, it's how you live. Faith is how you act upon what you believe. And if you're not acting upon what you believe, you're not exercising faith. You don't have it. What is religion? In my book, religion is action. It's what you do. It's how you live your life. It's not just what you say. It's not scriptures written on paper. It's not a meeting house that you go to on Sundays where you listen to a preacher or a pastor or a bishop or whoever's talking to you. It is what you do with your life. And I would recommend be the sort of person where other people can see your religion through your actions, where other people can see your faith through your actions. Man, my favorite book of scripture is probably the book of James in the New Testament, where the man talks about faith. Let's read the Bible together, friends. All the atheists are tuning out right now. No, not the Bible. Got the Bible on my phone right here. Let's pull that up. Let's see here. Book of James, New Testament. There we go. Chapter 2. Let's skip to the end. Yeah, spoiler alert for Chapter 2. I'm going to read the end here. James, who was an apostle of Jesus Christ, wrote this. Ye see, then, this is the King James Version, so it's got all that old-timey language like ye and thou and thee and so on. Ye see then how that by works a man is justified, and not by faith only. Likewise also was not Rahab the harlot justified by works when she had received the messengers and had sent them out another way? For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also. Let's back up a little bit. Let's back up. Verse 22. Seest thou how faith wrought with his works, and by works was faith made perfect? You can't have one without the other. Let's back up even more. The whole of chapter 2 is beautiful because it's about gospel in action. Right? Not in word, not in thought, not symbolically, but gospel in action. Right? Pure religion and undefiled is what? Chit-chat? No. It's to take care of the fatherless and the widows in their affliction and to keep yourself unspotted from the world. Those are actions, right? So to James, this man who literally wrote the Bible, if you will, or at least a chunk of it, religion was what you do. Faith is what you do, right? I will show you my faith by my works, he wrote. Anyway, I hope that helps. But if you want to know the things about God, talk to the man upstairs about that. Do I have the Bible on my lap? Got it on my phone, guys. How do you deal with tendinitis? Man, dealt with tendinitis. I had a really bad case of patellar tendinitis in my left knee that was so bad that I couldn't walk for about 3 months, and it impeded my training even after that. One of the biggest things that helped, changes in diet. Changes in diet, man. There are certain foods that are inflammatory. There are certain foods that are anti-inflammatory. Google that. What kind of foods are anti-inflammatory? What kind of foods are inflammatory? Right? There's a long list of stuff. Some of that stuff may be readily available where you live. Some of it may not. But Google that stuff. Look it up and make some subtle changes in your diet. Better sleep. Make sure your sleep is good. And make sure your recovery is good. Make sure there is good blood circulation to your whole body, right? Go on walks and stuff. Move in ways that does not aggravate the tendinitis, but gets the blood flowing throughout the body so that you can heal. When will I finish reading the Jack Dempsey book? Eventually. Thank you for the reminder. It's one of my favorite books, and I should definitely read that. Ooh, the Fire Dragon has a question about the Wim Hof Method. I recently discovered Wim Hof. He claims his method fights inflammation, but I can't speak for him. He is a yoga master with 26 world records. So yeah, Wim Hof is a strange and fascinating guy. If you're not familiar with, sorry, I've been talking so much. Need some water. So, if you're not familiar with Wim Hof, go check him out. He's got a bunch of videos, but I'll give you the Cliff's Notes version. So he was this guy who was looking for some sort of enlightenment or fulfillment or whatnot, and he tried it through a bunch of different things. And eventually he decided to jump in a pool of freezing cold water. And as he jumped in this pool of freezing cold water, what happened? His lungs kind of froze up and he couldn't breathe for a while. That's what happens when you jump in ice cold water. And he started noticing the breathing patterns that happened, and he tried to replicate those when he wasn't in the freezing cold water, and something magical happened. It changed his whole life, and then he went on to become this crazy dude who hiked up mountains in his shorts with no shirt, and yeah, no equipment and all these other crazy things, swimming under ice, and yeah, superhuman feats basically. And he claims that if you use this breathing method, it can do miraculous things, heal your body from infirmities, grant you superpowers and whatnot. And I mean, this guy has literally done these things, so it's kind of hard to say, nah, it's a bunch of crap, because again, he's a living example of this. Now, let's talk about the Wim Hof method a little bit. When you jump into freezing cold water, what happens? Have you ever done this? You ever hiked up to like a mountain lake? And I remember I hiked up to this mountain lake in Idaho, and there's some beautiful mountain lakes up there. And there was this waterfall. I'm like, man, that looks like a really beautiful place to jump in. And I jumped in there, and freezes the lungs, and you can't breathe. And you come up and you're trying to breathe, and you can't. Do you know what that is? It's something called the mammalian drowning reflex. I'm going to bring this back to fighting in just a bit. I'll probably make a YouTube video about this because it's really interesting. And it's a technique that I've used as a cornerman, and a lot of other cornermen have used this in boxing and other combat sports for decades. So the mammalian drowning reflex, when we get water on our foreheads that is colder, significantly colder than room temperature, it triggers the mammalian drowning reflex in our body. And it slows down metabolism, it slows down our breathing, sometimes even stops the breathing, slows down the heart rate right away. And so, after a round of fighting, you go to your cornerman has you look up, push out all the breath in your lungs, and you hold your breath, and they dump that cold water on your forehead right here, and then boom, it freezes. The mammalian drowning reflex sets in, and you can't breathe for a bit, and it feels like you're going to die, but the heart rate slows down, and your breathing slows down, and you reset. You literally reset, and you can go into that second round fresh. And it's crazy, but it totally works. And the Wim Hof method is very, very similar, just to a greater extreme in many ways. So I'm going to make a YouTube video about using the mammalian drowning reflex and weaponizing it for fighters. Because, man, that is an old school technique and very useful. Alright, we got a super chat from Danny, who says, why do Muay Thai guys make fun of Taekwondo? But in sparring, and I throw any type of Taekwondo kick, they complain about the bruise I put on their leg the next day. Huh. Okay, it sounds like the specific guys that you train with are the type of people who make fun of people. And, yeah, man. I've trained with a lot of Thais, and I never once heard any of them make fun of anybody. O.C. Jones says, I missed his super chat. I am sorry about that. Write it in the comments again, my friend. Let me see if I can find that one. O.C. Jones. But yeah, man, Danny Castell. Yeah, if you kick people, sure, they're going to complain about it. People are going to make fun of other martial arts. People get stuck on labels like, I do Muay Thai, that's better than Taekwondo. I do Jiu Jitsu, that's better than Krav Maga, whatever. Who cares about the labels? Take off the labels. You're a human. You have two arms and two legs. You kick and you punch and you grapple. It's not that complicated. Take away the labels. You're not a gang. They're not your gang colors. You know, if you're training at the same gym, be part of the same family. All right, OC Jones, if you could kindly remind me what your question was for that super chat that you sent in that I missed. Apologize for that, my friend. So many questions flashing by on the screen, it's hard to get them all. Do I believe in any conspiracy theories? Oh, well, that's a good question. That's a good question. Hmm. Hmm. I was talking to some friends of mine the other day about history, and I mentioned some historical events that they had not heard of, and they thought I was talking about conspiracy theories, and they were like, "What? Are you a conspiracy theorist?" I'm not. I'm telling them, "No, dude, that's U.S. history. This is documented." And they're like, "What? I've never heard that before." Ah, so conspiracy theory. Okay, O.C. Jones, I got one for you. I got one for you. Do you remember Dick Cheney, former Vice President of the United States? Okay, this has been totally buried on the internet. But do you remember when Dick Cheney changed his face? I want to know who else remembers this. My older sister remembers it. But the original Dick Cheney, the first guy who was voted into office, okay, is not the same guy who went out of office. It's a different guy with a different face. I remember it. Does anybody else remember this? That is my conspiracy theory. That somehow, I don't know what happened. Maybe the old Dick Cheney died and they got like a stunt double or something to fill in because, I don't know, political reasons. But different guy. Does anybody else remember that? I mean, it's buried on the internet. If you try to Google a picture of Dick Cheney when he went into office versus when he went out, you can't find it. There's my conspiracy. See if you can prove that one. Tips on using a light punching bag, 20 kilos, 3 feet tall, to increase the punching power. I use it mainly for speed. Okay, I really like working with really light punching bags, like a 20-kilo punching bag. Man, that is perfect. That is perfect. O.C. Jones, what historic events did I mention? Dick Cheney, former U.S. Vice President, how he was a different guy going into office versus the guy who finished the term. That's what I mentioned. Okay, but a light punching bag. Let's go back to that. I really like working with a light punching bag because with a big heavy punching bag, it's really tempting to push it and try to make it swing. And if you're pushing, you're not punching. So with a light punching bag, try to make it jump as opposed to swing. Because a light punching bag can tell you a whole lot about the destructive force you're putting into your punches as opposed to the push. So yeah, give that a try. Try to make that bag jump with your punches. Put as much power as you can into it, as much speed as you can into it without making the bag swing. And that'll give you some good feedback. And everybody's asking questions I already answered before. Why did I move to China? Rewatch this. We talked about that. Why did old-timey boxers use thin bag gloves? Because they're awesome. They're awesome, man. Thin bag gloves teach you a whole lot about punching. And also those thin bag gloves, they keep your skin from breaking. And another thing about the old-timey boxers, there was a time where boxing gloves weren't padded at all. Like prior to 1920, there was no padding on the gloves. And after 1920, there was very little padding on the gloves. Like very little. And man, boxing gloves with a lot of padding on them, those didn't even come into being for quite some time, man. Quite some time after that. But I like working out with the thin bag gloves because it prevents your knuckles from getting cut up, and you can hit that bag for over an hour, and hands are totally fine. And a bag glove with a nice grip bar in there, even without any wraps on that grip bar, allows you to lock those bones into place, and it allows you to, get correct knuckle contact, whether you're doing 2 knuckle or 3 knuckle. It allows you to hit and feel exactly which knuckles you're connecting with. Whereas if you got a 16-ounce glove on, man, you're not hitting with the knuckles at all. You're hitting with the padding. So, yeah, man, light bag gloves are very educational. Oh, what historic events did my friends think were fake when we were talking about conspiracy theories? Okay. All right, prior to World War II, let's talk about World War II. Um, one of one of the Nazi top scientists, I'm blanking on his name, but he was granted a honorary doctorate's degree from Harvard University, and his theories were approved by the United States government, and this led to one of the biggest stains in fairly recent United States history, which was mandatory sterilization of the feeble-minded. Anybody who was deemed feeble-minded by the government was mandatorily sterilized. This is fact. You can Google it. You can watch documentaries about this. And this went on up until the 1980s. Yeah, eugenics, man. This was a thing up until the 80s. People were still being sterilized up until the 1980s in the United States. And man, it was people who were, I mean, really anybody for literally any reason that the government deemed necessary were sterilized. And man, it is a mess. But yeah, my friends heard this and they're like, that didn't happen. That's a conspiracy. No, that's fact. That really happened in the United States. Yeah, man, there's a lot of stuff that sucked that happened historically in America and everywhere else in the world. All right, guys, I got time for a couple more questions. Then I got to skedaddle here. We need more audiobooks from you. All right, guys, you have encouraged me to keep reading and recording Championship Fighting for you guys. One of my favorite books, and yeah, love you guys to give a listen to that. Whoa, I'm getting a billion questions fly by the screen faster than I can read them. Hold on. Let me see if I can slow this down. When did I decide to focus on martial arts full time? Okay, seen that question flash by a few times. When did I decide to focus on martial arts full time? I was always focusing on martial arts part time for a very long time, and I was always working other jobs. For example, when I first got here to China, I was working at a university. I was teaching some classes at a Chinese university, and I was also running a gym and teaching classes there at the same time, trying to spread the sport of mixed martial arts throughout the People's Republic of China. And I remember at this gym, I was also teaching some other classes. I have a degree in dance, a degree in modern dance, and one thing I did in pursuit of my dance degree, I also studied ballroom and social dance and Latin dance and all these other dance styles and ballet and folk dance and whatnot. And so I ended up medaling in ballroom dance up to the gold standard. So ballroom dance has these different medals, bronze, silver, gold, depending on your skill level. And I medaled all the way up to the gold level because that was part of the program. I was never really that interested in ballroom dance. It's just something I did to get my dance degree. And there was a lot of interest from a lot of people asking me for ballroom dance lessons. And I taught ballroom dance lessons, and they paid me well for it. And this is something I was doing on the side in addition to teaching classes at the university and teaching classes at this gym that I opened up. And I remember at one point, while I was teaching ballroom dance lessons, I just remember thinking, like, this isn't what I love. And I was also fighting professionally at the time. This is before I retired, and I had a bunch of fights going on. And when I spread myself thin, I suffered for it in these fights. And I remember making this very conscious decision. I need to sacrifice these things that are just okay, or these things that are good, for the things that are better. And so it was at that point I decided I'm going to sacrifice teaching these ballroom dance classes. I'm going to sacrifice teaching at this university, and I'm going to devote everything into martial arts and make this a full-time thing. And yeah, that was a pretty transformative moment. It was a difficult moment because it's so easy for us to think, oh, I'm good at this thing, I'm good at that thing, I'm good at that. And sure, yeah, you are. But when you can streamline your life and focus on that one thing, you can learn a whole lot about everything from it, regardless. So, yeah, man, that was my experience with that. All right, guys, maybe one more question, then I gotta skedaddle. Oh man, I say one more question, I'm getting a billion questions pop up on the screen. If you guys would leave this many comments on my regular videos, man, they'd probably pop to the top of YouTube's search algorithms. This video has 50 bazillion comments. Okay, we have one more question from Nikhil Grave, who says, your thoughts on visualization, visualizing your goals or the law of attraction like Conor McGregor did. Now, I don't know exactly how Conor McGregor did it, but I'll tell you my thoughts on how I visualize. Okay, visualizing your goals. There's an old Latin saying, possunt quia posse videntur. It means, it's often mistranslated to, they can because they believe, or because they believe they can, or they think they can, but that's not it. It literally translates to, they can because they see that they can. Okay? Believing is seeing. Not the other way around. It's not seeing as believing. Believing is seeing. This probably sounds very strange because we often tell ourselves, I'll believe it when I see it. Not true. You see it because you already believe it. Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's the way the human mind works. When we're babies, we are born seeing blurry images, and then gradually, with the context of experience, those images come into focus, and then we're able to recognize faces and patterns, and so on. We are able to visualize what we've already experienced. Okay? So, if you are trying to shadow box and get something important out of that, you need to visualize. How do you do that? You draw on your context of experience. You think about fights you've been in. You think about sparring matches you've had. You think about fights that you've seen. And you emulate patterns. You try to improve upon your mistakes in the past. You try to imagine the guy you're going to fight, or this fighter that you've seen, and how he would move and how you would move against him and counter him and whatnot. But we can't visualize that unless we've actually experienced it before, unless we've seen it before. Believing is seeing, man. And motivation is belief. I talked about this in my last video. Motivation is belief. You want to be motivated to get something done, to visualize something. You have to believe it. Because if you don't believe it, you simply won't be motivated. Let me try to give you a concrete example. A concrete example. I talked about this in my recent video on video games and how video games are, how you can use a gaming strategy to improve at fighting, but it's not what you're thinking of. It's not about using fighting game techniques in real life. No, nothing like that. But rather using the discipline to do an unpleasant task because you know there's going to be a reward at the end because you believe it. And so you're motivated to grind in the game. How do you translate that into real life? If you just schedule your time and recognize that there is a reward at the end and you believe that, and then you grind until you get that, right? You visualize it. As far as fighting goes, man, there are many ways to visualize. If you have an upcoming fight, you are going to visualize, whether you want to or not, you're going to visualize that fight. If you do not come up with some more constructive visualization techniques, you are going to visualize the worst possible outcomes, and you will be filled with fear and dread and trepidation and anxiety. And so you have to start visualizing something more positive. You have to start believing something more positive. And you won't be able to do that unless you actually have the skills to make it happen. You brought up Conor McGregor. Why was he good at visualizing himself as the winner? Because he actually had skills to back that up. That's why we got to keep getting out there and training. There's never a point where we have arrived in fighting. There's never that point. And we saw that just this last weekend with Conor McGregor, where he lost that fight to a guy he had already beaten. And some people throw out all these reasons. Well, Conor wasn't training like he used to. He lost the fight. Okay, whatever. Whatever. It's just a testament to the fact that there's never a point where you arrive. You're always in a flux. So you always have to be getting out there and training. But going into that fight, you always have to carry with you the belief that you can, because you have put in the work, and so you get the result. That's how it works, guys. Hard work pays off. Thank you for watching. Now get out there and train.